So I'm gonna, it probably won't be successful, but I'm gonna try to stay up here because it helps our camera guys in the back and the people watching online. But if I come down there, I come down there. I like being down there, but I'm gonna try to stay up here. So adjust your head and look up here and we'll do it, all right? I think it's a worse angle for me, but that's okay. I have been studying these different characters that don't normally get mentioned except for maybe a sentence or two. And when we tell the resurrection story, the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus, the Easter story, and we started off a couple weeks ago with Peter. Last week we did Barabbas, and this week we're going to be kind of looking at Pilate. I've spent, I don't know how much time this week, listening, reading, learning, researching about Pilate, not because I have to in order to be able to preach a message on Sunday, because I'm stupid and obsessed, all right? But I am really, Pilate is a character. I'll tell you what got me going on this. This is gonna be another one of those things where I'm gonna give you a little bit of the procedure of how I got there. But I realized that, how many of you ever had to learn the Apostles' Creed? Can anybody do it? Still recite it? No, a little bit? Mom. Wow. Just do the first couple sentences for him. All right, here you go.
Hey, I was a Presbyterian until I was 15.
All right, get it.
I believe in God the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, and in Jesus Christ, his only Son, our Lord, conceived by the Holy Ghost, born of the Virgin Mary, suffered and died and something, rose again on the third day, ascended into heaven. Yes, suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, dead and buried. Should I get up and start walking the aisles?
The only thing that's made me happier than you getting Pontius Pilate in there is the flan I ate last night that Nady made, okay? That's about the only thing that made me happier, is that. Pontius Pilate. Do you know the only three characters, I gotta get back up here, the only three characters in the Apostles' Creed mentioned are Jesus, Mary, and Pilate. Not any of the disciples, not any of the normal characters you'd expect, not even Jesus' favorite John, maybe a throwback to Moses or Abraham. The only other character other than Mary and Jesus mentioned in that creed is Pontius Pilate. Thank you to the row right there, you all right, the Rico row, we're gonna call it, okay? It's Pontius Pilate. I find it very interesting that he's mentioned by name because we really don't know a lot about him. A lot of people think he was a general. A lot of people think he was in some sort of military fashion. People think he was a judge. People think he was a governor. People think a lot of things about Pilate. We don't know. Do you know to this day, they don't know how Pontius Pilate died? And until 1967, they had no evidence that Pontius Pilate was real, like physical evidence. They had writings, but they didn't have any physical evidence until 1967. Let me tell you a little bit about Pilate, and then I'm going to read some of the accounts having to do with Pilate and Jesus from the four Gospels, because this is where I'm getting with this whole thing, guys. This is where I'm getting. If we don't embrace and learn the history, not just the whitewashed Christian history, like the history that everybody agrees on, and we read the New Testament without the historical context of what's going on, we are missing 80% of it. We don't understand motives, we don't understand mindsets, we don't understand anything. So we read the New Testament and we get something out of it, no doubt, but we're missing so much because there's a lot happening during this period of time. It's a lot to take in. So I'm gonna give you a quick history lesson, and then I'm going to kind of hopefully paint a picture for the mindset of Pontius Pilate going into this incident. First of all, Pilate was born to the Ponti family. Pontius comes from Ponti, P-O-N-T-I, Ponti. And they were from a little area east of Rome, so more towards the center of Italy, called Samnia. And so this family was fairly influential in Samnia. And it looks like Pontius Pilate, from a young age, joined like the Praetorian Guard, like their kind of army, and was involved in that. But his family had money, they had some influence. But just like most of that region of the world, over time, everything got kind of sucked into the cultural and political powerhouse that is Rome. So the family, for years, kind of had odds with Rome, and that region had odds with Rome, and probably in some of these battles that you can look up that where the Samnians were fighting the Romans, you'll probably find that they had some clashes. So they weren't necessarily like super thrilled that they were kind of getting absolved into Rome and the Roman Empire, but they became a part of it. Pontius Pilate was a very interesting character because from a young age, he seemed to have real skills on the battlefield. Pilate, we think, actually was his nickname, not his actual name. Pontius, coming from the Ponti family, would have kind of been his family name. We think Pilate was like his nickname, and they believe it came from the fact that he was really good throwing this spear or javelin that you might see in some of the movies during that Roman Empire period, but it was actually called the pilum, P-I-L-U-M. So it's like when we call Pistol Pete, right? It's like, it was his nickname. He was Pontius Pilate. He was the family member of the Ponti family that was really good throwing that spear. And he was fairly brutal and outwardly and openly kind of embraced this political movement in the Roman Empire that wanted to get rid of the Jews. So anti-Semitic kind of leanings. Well, as he got a little bit older, they moved to Rome. He's kind of known to be this really good soldier, this really good, he was amazing on the battlefield. He just won a lot, and he was a tough guy, and he was strong, and he had great aim and all of that kind of stuff. But he had nothing else going for him. No real education to speak of. His family was powerful, but in a small town. And they get swept into the culture of Rome. And when they go there, he finds himself in a family who finds themselves in the lowest class of the upper class of Roman society. Now you think to yourself, but he's still in the upper class. Oh no, there's like 7, 8 different classes above him. And only the top 2 classes would have been the classes that actually would hold political office. So he had no shot, just because of the class he was in, the education he was in, where he was from, to actually hold any sort of political office. But this guy comes along named Sejanus, alias Sejanus. He was born 20 BC, 20 years before Christ, and died in 31 AD. That's very important, 2 years before Jesus was crucified. Sejanus dies. I'll tell you how that happened in a moment. So you got Pontius Pilate, you got this guy Sejanus. I'm going to tell you about him for a moment. Sejanus was working his way up the Roman Empire. He was the prefect or the governor or the head, the general of the Praetorian army. He had heard about this guy that had moved to Rome that was pretty brutal. And he said, I'm in charge of appointing some of these governors over some of these areas. And so he sends Pilate to be the governor over the area where Caesarea is, where we've been, in Israel, and Jerusalem, over kind of where Herod is. And he's going to work kind of in conjunction with Herod, but the goal is this. Sejanus has a goal, and that's this. The Caesar, the emperor at the time of Jesus' crucifixion, was Tiberius. And Sejanus wanted Tiberius's job. He was extremely anti-Semitic, and Sejanus believed that if he could eliminate the Jews, that it would be a good thing for the Roman Empire, and he could work his way up the ranks and hopefully take Tiberius's job. He was very ambitious. So as he had the power to begin to kind of place into these different positions, these governors, he doesn't pick a guy with political experience. He doesn't pick a guy that's in the right class. He picks a guy who's brutal. Or so he thinks. And based on his skill in the battlefield, he says, I know he doesn't have what it takes to be governor, but I don't need him to like figure out all the ins and outs of the politics in Caesarea or Jerusalem. I just need him to go there, and when I give him the orders, to keep those people under control by any means necessary. So Pilate becomes, this is very important, Pilate is elevated into a position he doesn't deserve. He is now jumped like 5 rungs of class to become governor of this area. And if you know anything about Caesarea Maritime or Maritima, it is a planned, like beautiful, planned, it's one of the only planned cities of all of this region. They planned it out and built it. It is beautiful, and it's right on the coast. And I've been there, and it is beautiful. It's amazing. They have this amazing amphitheater that's still in existence today. You can see how they built a hippodrome, you know, like where they would do the horse races, literally where the background is the cliffs and the water. It's like what Pebble Beach is to the golf world. It's like the most picturesque place to have these games and events. This is Caesarea. So Pilate goes there, and this is a crown jewel of the Roman Empire, and they do not want these Jews getting out of control. And he sends Pilate there. Anything that comes up, Pilate, you deal with it, and you know how you're supposed to deal with it. It'll be at the tip of your spear. Take care of it. And Pilate goes there, and you have to understand, class is very important at this time. Pilate knows he doesn't belong as governor, but nevertheless, he's going to give it a whirl. That becomes a very important part into the psychology of Pontius Pilate, never believing he was worthy of the position he was given, constantly insecure, constantly wondering if any moment someone's going to say, wait, you don't have what it takes to be in this position. His mindset, now you say, Pastor Dan, how do you know this to be true? When you read the scriptures and understand the history, it's going to click so perfectly that you're going to be able to fill in the blanks of where Pontius Pilate was. When we read these scriptures in the Gospels, you're going to go, oh, because we read the accounts and we go like, what is going on here? Why is there so much back and forth between him and Jesus, and sending Jesus to Herod, and then having these conversations with the people accusing Jesus? What is going on here? It's going to make sense to you. Pilate is insecure. Pilate doesn't understand or believe he is worthy of the position he's in. And he gets in this position, and he turns out not to be as brutal as this guy Sianus thought he would be. There's one particular incident that comes up where Pilate sends, there's some barracks outside of Herod's temple in Jerusalem. And he sends some Roman soldiers there to just be close enough that if anything got weird at the temple, they could take care of it. And he sends them over there, but the soldiers show up with banners, big giant banners that have an image of Tiberius, the Caesar, because the Caesar, the emperor of the time, would be like a god to them. He's a deity. And so they show up with this picture of their deity, their Caesar, their emperor, on their banners, and it's posted outside, literally connected right with the temple. And the Jews take the whole no graven image thing very serious. So the Jews started an uprising, and they are absolutely losing their minds over these graven images that have now been posted outside of Herod's temple. And Pilate comes in there. He's called up, and they send a soldier back to say, Pilate, we've got a problem. And this is Pilate's, they call this the banner incident, because there were these banners. Pilate has 5 major incidents in his life that gives us a picture of who he is. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'll get to 3 of them. So he shows up outside of this temple, and there's this uprising, and they are going berserk, and the soldiers are like, what do you want us to do? And so he brings the soldiers together, and he's like, listen, we're going to go out there. I'm going to give them a chance to stop this uprising, and if they don't, we're going to slaughter them all. The soldiers are like, okay. Everyone's like, yeah, this is why this guy was sent here. Yeah, we're going to take care of this. So they all run out there, and they get up there, and Pilate stands up on the steps of probably, the barracks there or wherever it is there at the temple, and he gets the people together, and he gets them to calm down. He says, you need to leave and to get out of here, or else we're going to slit your throats. He's like, And the Jewish people call his bluff. And they go like this: have at it. You want to kill us? Kill us. And Pilate's like, oh boy, what do I do now? They call his bluff, and Pilate backs down and leaves there even more insecure about he was sent there to do a job and he couldn't accomplish it. And he's like, oh man, if this gets back that these guys are freaking out to Sejanus, he's going to be like, I sent you there to do a job and you're not doing it. A couple of years later, he's in Caesarea. We've actually seen the aqueduct in Caesarea that Pontius Pilate rebuilt. There's an aqueduct there that takes water into Jerusalem. It was very important. He was like, I know how to get these people on my side. I'm going to take some money from the treasury. I'm going to rebuild this aqueduct to get water into Jerusalem. Well, that put a further divide between him and the Jews because they were angry that he stole money from the treasury to do something they didn't necessarily want to be done. And so another uprising starts, but this time he has a different plan. He says, I'm going to dress my soldiers as Jewish people in civilian clothes, and they're going to have clubs underneath their outfits. And I'm going to give them a chance to stop this rebellion. This is called the aqueduct incident. And if they stop this rebellion, fine. But if not, I'm going to give the signal, and these guys are going to take the clubs out, and it's going to look like they're killing each other or beating each other. Well, it goes a little too far, and a bunch of them beat the Jews a little too hard, and some of them die, which widens the gap even more between the people that Pontius is supposed to have under control, and he is in trouble. Now, where do I get all this from? I'll tell you where I get it from. There are 4 major sources. You don't need to know this, but there's 4 major sources that they use to kind of come up with all this. One is a guy named Flavius Josephus, who was born in 40 AD. So through 7 years after Christ died, in this area, who wrote a lot of what was happening and going on. Another one was Philo of Alexandria, who actually was alive during all of this. He was born 25 years BC and died about 50 years AD. So he was a philosopher and a writer. They call him the father of church history. And he has extensive writings about these uprisings and what was going on. You ask me what kind of guy was Philo. He was a bit of a doughboy. All right, you'll get that later. Here we go. That was a chef's joke. Never mind. All right. So, and then we have Eusebius of Caesarea. Someone's explaining it to somebody. All right. Eusebius of Caesarea, who was born about 200 years later, and he became the bishop of Caesarea. So he started collecting data and artifacts of what was going on in the governance of Caesarea. Well, 1967 rolls around. We still don't have any actual proof that this guy Pilate was alive, other than these stories. And they need proof, physical evidence, to corroborate Flavius Josephus, Philo of Alexandria, and this guy Eusebius. And then the 4th thing is the 4 Gospels. They need this 5th thing, actual evidence. So we've seen both the replica of it and the original. In their excavation in 1967 of Caesarea Maritime, they find a pillar or a block that has Tiberium or Tiberius, who was the Caesar at the time, and below it, Prefector Pontius Pilate, Governor Pontius Pilate. And they also found in the same area coins that have Pilate written on it with the Ponti family crest, knowing that there was a guy named Pilate who was you had to be a governor or higher to have a coin made out of you, right, your family, and that was his name, right in the same area. So we have all these things corroborating these stories to give us a picture of this guy and where he was at. So Pilate has these incidents, and a couple years go by, and Sejanus, who is ready to take over the throne, he poisons some of Tiberius's family. He's ready to take over the throne. He's got what he feels like is the right governors in position to pull this off. And somebody blows the whistle. This guy Tiberius, I know this is a lot, but just hang with me. I'm gonna make sense of it. This guy Tiberius, he's kind of semi-retired and letting his people do the work. He's living on a beautiful palace on the very highest point of Capri. Anyone ever been to Capri in Italy? I've yet to go, but it is beautiful, all right? I've seen lots of pictures of it. Beautiful place. That's where this emperor, this Caesar is hanging out, right? And Sejanus is like, this is my time. He's kind of semi-retired. Well, he gets word of it in 31 AD, 31 years into Jesus' life. He gets word that this guy's trying to overthrow him. And he murders him. He brings him into the town square and executes him. Listen, this is super important. Then he starts to execute anyone associated with Sejanus. Family members, associates, people he's appointed. He tries to figure out the entire network of what this guy was trying to pull off and get rid of every one of them to make sure there was nobody that was going to try to carry out his mission. But Pilate is waiting. There's writings where you can see where Pilate is waiting for the day that they're going to come and arrest him and bring him into the town square and execute him as a part of Sejanus' plan to overthrow the Roman emperor. He is we've gone from insecure to paranoid and worried. He doesn't belong there. He was only appointed there because he was brutal. He didn't come from the right class. And he's even messed up what he was sent there to do. And now the guy that appointed him has been tried and executed for treason, and all the people associated were being tried and executed for treason. And this happens 2 years before the third incident in Pilate's life, which is a biggie. It's the Jesus incident. Do you understand where Pilate's at here? Anyone feeling bad for Pilate right now? The guy is like, what is going to happen? So we pick up Pilate's story. Y'all with me? I know that was a lot. This is good. You got to know this. We pick up now Pilate's story where the guy who appointed him as mentor has been executed. The people that have been appointed in positions like him executed. He hasn't actually done his job well. The people in Caesarea have had multiple major uprisings. There's been properties that have been damaged. There have been Roman soldiers that have been killed. There have been Jewish civilians that have been killed innocently. He's a mess. And they drag before him the priests, the Sanhedrin, the elders, drag before him this guy who's running around calling himself king. King of the Jews or Caesar or whatever you want to say here. So now we read these Gospels with a totally different picture of where Pilate is. It's not just some general they brought him before. This is a guy who's on the edge and worried that at any moment his number is going to be called and he's going to be the next one executed. And as we know from the stories of Jesus, they didn't execute people kindly. So check this out. If you're bored, I'm sorry, but it's going to make sense now, all right? Matthew 27, I'm going through these so quickly that just hang with me. It says, the morning came, the chief priests and elders of the people took counsel against Jesus to put him to death. They bound him and led him away and delivered him over to Pilate the governor. So we know Pilate's the governor of the area. If we pick it up in Mark, it says, as soon as it was morning, the chief priests had a consultation with the elders and scribes and the whole council. They bound Jesus, they led him away, delivered him over to Pilate, and Pilate asked him, are you king of the Jews? And he answered him, yes, you have said so. And the chief priests accused him of many things. Not Pilate, remember. It's these chief priests. It's their plan. Pilate asked him, have you no answer to make? See how many charges they bring against you. Jesus made no further answer. If we keep going down, we're going to see this. They're going through the Barabbas thing, trying to figure that out. Finally, he says, so Pilate, this is the scriptures. This isn't me like adding and embellishing. This is word for word. So Pilate, wishing to satisfy the crowd. Now, we've read that before. We had no idea why Pilate was so obsessed with satisfying the crowd. We get it now, right? If there's one more uprising, his number might be called and he could be executed next. This is not a guy that's firmly in his position. He was never firmly in his position. From the moment he was appointed, he knew he didn't have the right credentials to be where he was. So Pilate, wishing to satisfy the crowd, released for them Barabbas, and having scourged Jesus, he delivered him to be crucified. If we go to Luke's account, I'm going to just not read it all because it'll get redundant. It says, then Pilate said to the chief priests and the crowds, I find no guilt in this man. We remember that, right? He's like, we've looked into his life. I find no guilt. the next scripture. What do the chief priests, what do those that represent the kind of the religious orthodoxy of the day, what do they have to say? How are they going to pray on Pilate's insecurities? They say, but they are urgent, saying, he stirs up the people, teaching throughout all of Judea from Galilee even to this place. Oh, then you skip ahead a little bit more. We find out that in John, this is amazing. Then John, if we skip down, let's see, is it John here? We'll pick it up. I've got to find the right one here because there's a good one here. Then we find out that, is it in John? Sorry, guys. Then if we find out in John, we pick up John in chapter 19, verse 12. Are you ready for this? It says this, from then on, Pilate sought to release him, but the Jews cried out. Are you ready for this? If you release this man, you're not Caesar's friend. Now, I don't care who you are in this room. None of us understood why the heck they said that. And how powerful of a statement that would have been to Pilate. And listen to this. It says, everyone who makes himself a king opposes Caesar. Listen to what they're saying. They're saying to Pilate, Pilate, I'm going to make this make sense for you and me, I promise, and we'll be done in like 10 minutes, 15 minutes at the most. He's saying, Pilate, this guy's calling himself king. You're already in hot water. Caesar already thinks that you're trying to overthrow him. Now we bring before you somebody who's claiming to be king, claiming to be Caesar, claiming to be on the same level as Caesar. This is why he executed Sejanus, and you were kind of a part of that thing. And now we bring before you this man, and if you don't execute him, you're just as well betraying Caesar himself by letting this guy go around and say he's king too. I mean, he's not super educated. He doesn't really belong in the position. He's got a lot of stuff happening here. He's now messed up multiple times. The guy that he had that appointed him has now been taken out along with all of his associates, and he doesn't understand why he's been spared. And now he's got this another uprising, another incident going on, and they're going right for the jugular. They are preying on his insecurities of not believing that he can trust his own judgment, his own voice, and believe in himself. Now, before I kind of get to the main punchline here, why are every single one of us Pilate in this room? Because bad religion will always prey on our insecurities of whether or not we're enough. Lord, help me, Jesus. I just thank you, Lord, for your goodness and your help right now. Bad religion. Oh, it's the world. Oh, it's not the world. Religion will always prey on how you're not enough and then slip in the solution. But if you follow our rules and our ways, Jesus will make up the difference for you. But they get you in a position to manipulate you. Pilate is not an evil man here. Pilate has been manipulated because they preyed on his insecurities, his fears, his worries, his own feeling like he wasn't enough, feeling like he didn't have what it takes, feeling like I don't belong in this position. I've already messed up a bunch of times. I don't have a lot more opportunities to mess up. Does this sound familiar to anybody in this room? Has anybody in this room ever been anywhere in their life where they felt like I've messed up too many times and I can't mess up again and this doesn't feel right, but I'm gonna go along with it? Come on, I'm gonna go along with it because if I don't, I'm worried about if I don't go along with it, but it doesn't feel right, and then you find yourself in even a worse situation. Take this a step further. He is looking in the face of the Messiah himself. And if you read all four accounts in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, he seems aloof. He seems indifferent. He seems very sure that this guy did nothing wrong, and yet he's still able to be manipulated. Do you realize that because of his insecurities and because of the fact they preyed on him not feeling like he was enough and he could trust his own voice, that he was looking the Messiah in the face and didn't know it? I know that's no one in this room. I know nobody has ever missed Jesus because of their insecurities or not feeling like they were enough. The cycle of feeling inferior and feeling insecure and feeling like we are not enough and feeling like we can't trust our own voice and feeling like like our own clearly he had the right idea. This guy, I can't find any fault in him. I mean, he had it right. What changed? What switched in Pilate's mind? It was them realizing that this guy, he's got a weakness and we're going to prey on it. We say that's the devil. Well, if the devil is dressed in a robe and gets up in the pulpit every Sunday, then that's fine. Do you hear me today? Why am I preaching this? I'll tell you why I'm preaching it. Because I believe that, and I'm going to get to the main point here with what Jesus does. I believe wholeheartedly that the only way we can be healthy as believers, as a body of believers and individually, is if we empower people to believe that whether they deserve it or not, where God's got them, he's got them. Does that make sense? Where he's positioned them, they can accomplish it. Teaching people to trust their inner voice. Teaching people that what they feel and understand and feel like is right, even when they're being manipulated by outside voices that have other agendas. Come on. Do you know how many times I've had a conversation with pastors and believers where they said, I totally agree with you, but I just can't do that. I'm like, if you totally believe it, why can't you do it? Because this thing that wants to destroy what Jesus died for, this freedom that we have found and this life that we have found abundantly and new as Christians and as believers and people that follow the teachings and the life of Jesus and what he died for and defeated when he was resurrected, that we'll celebrate next week after 3 days of being there, when he defeated death, hell, and the grave, what he's given to us over time, we've allowed faith and religion, bad faith and religion, to slowly encroach like a pot of boiling water that slowly goes from cold to boiling and kills whatever's in it. It works like that, and it chips away at you. And what happens is that I'm going to get real with you right now. What happens is in church, we do this. We say, everybody's welcome. Everybody. You just come on in. We just love Jesus. Every church, what's their slogan? Everyone's welcome. All are welcome. Everybody's here. And then you get in, and they get you in the seat, and they get you plugged into some sort of program or serving or doing this or that, and then they start working on you. This is not an anti-church message. This is an anti-bad religion message. This is an anti-manipulation message. If you like manipulation, I'm sorry, but this is an anti-manipulation message. This is an anti-using something as precious as salvation, the beautiful bloodshed of Jesus for our lives and for our freedom to manipulate people. That's what I'm against. I'm not against a preacher or a pastor or a church. That's what I'm against, is when things get ugly. And what happens is they get you in, and then they start to needle you. And so Pilate finds himself in this position and feeling like, wait a second, but the minute the weakness is found, the minute they realize he's insecure, and every single person in this room has some sort of insecurity, some sort of thing they feel like they're lacking in. And when we begin to listen to that voice, whether it's coming from bad religion or it's coming from the enemy or it's coming from within, when we listen to that voice, we can miss the Messiah sitting right in front of us. And we have, I'm going to say it, we have cloaked that idea in fake humility. We say, well, I really don't feel like this is right, but I don't trust myself because I'm just a wicked vessel. Just relying on the Lord. Well, the Lord has spoken to you from the inside out. It was him who gave you that thought. It was him who gave you that truth. And because of people that have had outside ulterior motives over time, you've learned to not trust yourself. How many of us have found ourselves in a situation that when we got in that bad situation, we went, if I would only have listened and trusted my gut, I wouldn't be here right now. But something manipulated you out of trusting your gut. What was it? So how do I know this was Pilate's problem? Well, I've kind of built a decent case around it, but I want to seal up that case right with this. You ready? Jesus, other than just this whole Jesus plays a word game with him, right? He's like, in almost every account, he's like, hey, uh, so you're saying you're the king of the Jews? And Jesus is like, well, you said it. Like Jesus gives him nothing. And in multiple accounts it says, and then Jesus just said nothing. The only thing he says of substance to Pilate, are you ready for this? He says this, and this is one I highlighted so I don't have to search all over for it. He says, Jesus answered, my kingdom is not of this world. Wait for it. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would have been fighting. Now that backs up last week's whole thing with Barabbas. If you weren't here, shame on you. You're probably not going to make it to heaven, all right? But Barabbas, the point of Barabbas last week is that there were more people in the crowd that supported Barabbas because he was a freedom fighter than there were that supported Jesus. So that makes perfect sense now when he says, hey, he goes, if my kingdom were of this world, my servants would have been fighting. Then he says, that I might not be delivered over to the Jews, but my kingdom is not of this world. I'm going to read you that in a little different version. Just getting a little bit more to the original Greek. My kingdom has nothing in common with the political or religious systems of this world. Now, if you were here last week, you need to just take that one back and just marinate it with what I said last week, and you'll get something out of it, all right? It does not originate out of their structures. If it did, my subordinates would fight for me and resist my handover to the Jews. Thank you, Holy Scriptures, for supporting last week's message again. I appreciate you so much. Verse 37 of John 18. Then Pilate said to him, so you are king? Jesus answered, you're the one that said I'm king. Ready for this? This is the only account that we have of him going beyond him saying, you said it. According to John chapter 18, he had one more line in there, and he said this, for this purpose I was born, Pilate. Now he's speaking to Pilate. He's not speaking to the people in the crowd. Jesus, listen to me, has a prophetic moment with Pilate where he sees the fear and the insecurity in Pilate's eyes, and he speaks to it. And what he says is this. He says, Jesus answered saying, for this purpose I was born, and for this purpose I have come into the world, to bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice. Now wait for it. The earlier versions of this scripture, he doesn't say everyone. He says to Pilate, and if you listen to my voice. When we had to change the narrative with Barabbas in the early scriptures, or the early writings, or the early versions of the Bible, we also had to change the narrative with Pilate. They both had to be switched. We had to change the story a little bit because we couldn't have that out there. Barabbas became a murderer and a robber, right? Now Pilate is somebody who's disconnected from it. He's part of the cabal. No, Jesus says to him, he doesn't say everyone. The only thing he leaves with, he says to him, even if he doesn't say to him personally, he's still making a statement to Pilate. He goes, everyone who's of the truth listens to my voice. And what he's saying, he says, and if you listen to the truth, you listen to my voice. If you go in and break down those Greek words, have at it. It's not that fun, trust me, but go do it. He's saying everyone who recognizes their true origin hears my voice. He's resetting Pilate in that moment to realize, Pilate, the reason we're in this situation is you stopped listening to your voice. You stopped listening to the true origin of who I created you to be. Because my voice inside of you, speaking to your true identity, would have never found you in the situation we're in today. He's resetting Pilate back to, he ministers to the man who is handing him over to be crucified by saying, listen to the true voice inside of you. Hear the true voice that I'm speaking on the inside. the voice that called you out before you were ever created in your mother's womb, that voice that is rung true inside of you from the beginning of time, listen to that. Because that voice did not tell you you weren't supposed to be governor. That voice did not tell you you weren't capable. That voice did not tell you that you should do whatever it takes to not get murdered. That voice did not tell you to be scared. That voice did not tell you to be insecure. That voice did not tell you to be full of shame and condemnation. That voice did not tell you to feel like you were a failure. That voice did not tell you any of the lies that Pilate and you and me believe on a regular basis about myself, about ourselves and myself. None of those things did that voice say. He's saying to him, knowing that this is probably over, if there's one thing I can leave with you, Pilate, listen to the voice of the one who created you that's on the inside. Because everyone who listens, it says everyone who hears that voice hears the truth. Everyone who listens to that voice hears the truth. Almost everything in our lives is designed to get us to stop listening to the voice of our Creator ringing on the inside. Everyone is saying, listen to me, listen to my book, listen to this program, listen to this particular speaker, listen to this author. There can be value in all of that. There's not a lot of people saying, listen to what he's saying on the inside. Listen to the voice that was calling unto you before you were ever born. Listen to the one true God that's ringing out on the inside of you. There's not a lot of people that are saying that today, and it's because we are scared of the idea that people would actually start trusting the voice of the one that created them on the inside. Why? Because if Pilate would have listened to that voice, he would have never been controlled by the crowd. Anyone here ever been controlled by the crowd? Maybe a little bit? I have. I'm going to end now, but I grew up, and if you said I dare you before you could get what the dare was, I'd be doing something crazy. And I blame primarily this man's son for about 90% of it. Jesse David Minor III. It's definitely true. When I was 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, I don't want to go beyond that because I was an adult and I'm probably still, the statute of limitations hasn't run out. But if his son and he never was the one that volunteered to do anything, by the way, okay? But if he said to me, Dan, I dare you. We had nicknames for each other. I won't talk about that. But he said, Dan, I dare you to. I was like, tell me. Tell me. I'll do it. I'll do it. And then sometimes he'd come up with something and be like, that's it? Like, come on, give me something good here. I dare you to. I'd do it. 100%. I'd do it. No, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to tell you. Just trust me. If you want to hear those kind of stories, you actually have to come hang out with the spiritual development class with Harvest House on Wednesday nights. Do I not tell some stories? I say, put your cell phones away. The camera's not going, and I tell some stories, all right? I did. But in my life, it was that. It was what the crowd wanted. And if the crowd thought that would be great, I'd do it, even if something inside of me was saying, don't do this. My mom was haunted for most of her life and most of my life, believing she had nightmares that I would die young because I was just so stupid. I can say that about myself. Because if somebody's like, I dare you to jump off this third story into the trampoline and try to do a backflip into the pool while eating an apple, I would try it.
Stupid is correct.
Yeah, put your mask back on. You shut up. I'm sick. Put your mask on. Let me hear you. I'll end with this. I'll help you with this, hopefully. The best way to begin to beat the voice of the crowd in your life is to learn to trust what you're saying on the inside. Listen to the creator, the voice, the one that everybody has tried to tell you, isn't real. Don't trust it. Listen. Learn to distinguish between your emotional whims and the voice of God that's inside of you. One will always lead you to away from destruction, and one you never know. But there's a difference. Your voice that is inside of you, your creator. That Pilate, if he would have listened to that day, wouldn't have been manipulated by the crowd and probably would have been able to stick with his guns and realize there's something special and different about the guy in front of me, and I don't find any fault in him. This has been part 3 of the Underdogs of Easter. Next week, we wrap up with an Easter extravaganza blowout. John's going to come sweeping in on a, no, all right. John's going to do a jiu-jitsu demonstration where he tries to break his brother's arm. No. We'll see you next week. We love you so much. Can't wait to see you next week at 10 o'clock for Easter.